Hello everyone and welcome back to Ushanka Show, the place where you can learn something new about life in the Soviet Union. In today's video, I'll tell you about school lunches in the USSR. I had several people asking that question. And just a friendly reminder, I'll be talking about situation in schools in late 70s and the 80s. This is when I attended school in Kiev, Soviet Ukraine. I may surprise some of my viewers, but we had to pay, our parents had to pay for food in schools. And the cost, according to one of my viewers, Alexei Arsentiev, he helps me out. Sometimes I didn't remember amounts, but he said in 1988, breakfast in school was 1 ruble 20 kopek a week, and lunches were 1 ruble 80 kopek a week. And we went to school 6 days, so from Monday till Saturday. The only day off for us was on Sunday. So if you do some basic math, breakfast in Soviet school was 20 kopecks per meal, and lunch was 30 kopek per meal. Let's do a little bit more math, and we come up with 3 rubles per week, 12 rubles per month. And if you consider the average salary in the Soviet Union was around 150 to 180 rubles, parents were spending on a single child 8% of their salary a year, so about 100 rubles a year was spent on a meal if you buy breakfast and lunch for your kid. If you have one kid, of course. More kids, more expenses. So definitely not cheap. It's very much parents would be spending on the lunch and breakfast for their kids same amount of money they were spending on subsidized housing in the Soviet Union. So that sounds really bizarre. Like amount of money you spend to rent your small apartment, it's the same amount of money you spend to feed your kid in school. And just to do a little comparison, so picture if you're making $5,000 a month here in the United States, I'm just throwing that number out there, it would translate into $400 a month paying for your child's meals. $5,000 income, $400 just for the meals in schools. Not that cheap. The only way parents could get free lunches in school if they had 3 or more children in their family. Then they go into a category called многодетная семья, so it's like multi or many children family. And then многодетная семья would qualify to get a free breakfast and free lunch in school. As I mentioned earlier, I lived in Kiev, Soviet Ukraine, and among all my friends, I knew only one family that had 3 boys, 3 children. Otherwise, it was pretty much 50-50. Families had or a single kid or 2 kids. So average amount of children in a Soviet family in the cities, at least in Kiev, was 1.5. So there was not many families that had more than 2 kids. When I did a quick research on this topic, just to refresh my memory, I found some mixed information because some people claimed that in their schools it was required to buy food. So parents had to pay for breakfast and lunches and kids had to eat. Of course, when you force kid to eat food they don't like, it's just money wasted. In my case, we weren't forced because I hardly ever ate in the cafeteria in our schools. And I went through 3 different schools in 3 different areas in Kiev, but I always ate food at home. So from my early childhood, I always ate heavy, hearty breakfast. My mom just forced me, and now it got into habit. So in the morning, could be some mashed potatoes and a sausage, or porridge with milk and some bread with butter, maybe a cup of tea. So I would have enough breakfast to last all the way till 2 in the afternoon so I can come home and I'm ready for lunch. So I was never hungry actually in school. And this early hearty breakfast habit is so ingrained in me now. So even now, like on my days off, I get up in the morning, do my morning routine, and then I'm in the kitchen making tea or coffee and having pretty decent sized breakfast. Even I'm not hungry. Like I'm not hungry, but I'll still eat big breakfast. It's just the habit now. Besides serving food, breakfasts and lunches, school cafeterias also sold food items. You could buy juice there or some pirozhное, so some sweets, baked goods. So that's the only thing I used to buy in the cafeteria. They used to sell so-called лимонное пирожное. So that's like a lemon cake, I guess. And the price was 13 kopecks. I still remember the price because I begged my mom so many times, can I please have some money, because I liked that pirozhное so much. It was really sweet, very delicious, and that was pretty much after second class I will go with kids. So kids will be having breakfast, but I'm not hungry. I already had breakfast at home, so I'll buy just pirozhnoye as a treat. As I mentioned earlier, I attended 3 different schools back in Kiev. So I went first, second, and third grade. So it's starting at 7-year-old. In school number 69, of course, now you can start chuckling, but back then, number 69 had no naughty reference back in the Soviet days. Then my family moved to this new developed area where we purchased our 3-room cooperative apartment, and I had a brand new school number 223. And that's what they had the different rules about food. They actually forced everyone to drink boiled milk. And that's the most vile experience, horrible experience I had in the school cafeterias. They would march us, like everyone was required to do it. And there was boiled milk in glass cups, stakane, and already had a film on the top, and they made sure that you drink that milk. And that was just disgusting. I don't know if you ever tried to drink boiled milk. It's nasty. But for some reason, in my first school, number 69, we weren't required to do that. And I looked it up. Apparently, from the first to the fourth grade, that's when milk was provided for young kids. And in some schools, it was free of charge. Some parents paid some money, but it was pretty cheap. But I said, that was nasty. I don't think anyone I knew liked boiled milk. As I mentioned earlier, once again, the cost of lunch, обед, as we call it, was 30 kopecks. And that was after the end of school. So classes are over, and then kids who stay in school for extended time, then they go to have lunch. And it usually consisted of первое, второе, and третье блюдо. So first dish would be a bowl of soup, or borscht, of course. Second plate will be maybe mashed potatoes and a cutlet, and then you have a compote, so it's a boiled dry fruit or fresh fruit, or a glass of tea. The good question is, how good was this food? And once again, it's the mixed bag. When I was researching and going through different forums, a lot of people that miss Soviet Union, so-called sovkadrochery, my goodness, you read their memories about having lunch in school cafeterias, and sounds like they attended, some Michelin 5-star restaurant. They're like, the most delicious food ever. Oh my God, I never ate anything so delicious. I personally don't remember eating anything that outstanding except that limonное пирожное, that lemon cake. And I don't think any of my friends were really complimenting much, but I find it quite amazing that people who miss Soviet Union, they also, for some reason, think that was the best food ever. Like, I always thought my mom's food was way better than anybody else cooking, especially school cafeteria. But you need to understand that most school cafeterias made their food from scratch, so they had to cook, peel potatoes, boil water, making soup. So everything was done on site from the scratch. So now we're talking about, of course, how good was the main cook person, because, there are restaurants that can make a delicious fried eggs and some can just burn them. So similarly, it depended on the quality of people who worked there. And of course, it depended how honest they were. Because if you, in a large city like Kiev, Moscow, and you have access just to go to the grocery store and purchase meat and butter without any problems, then probably you don't intend to steal as much as some small town that can't just go and buy meat, and you work at the environment when the meat comes in to be made into cutlets and made into soup. So you have a lot of interest in kind of cut the size of the portions so you can take home a couple of kilograms of butter and a couple of kilograms of meat and sugar. So because you had access to those goods, so it depended on the honesty of cooks and how much they wanted to steal, and of course how much was the oversight from the school management, because the director of school was supervising their cafeteria. It was part of the same organization. So I assume it's a huge difference depending what it was going on and how honest the cooks were. Another interesting detail about Soviet era school cafeterias, that kids were actually I wouldn't say forced, but required to help in the cafeteria. They didn't cook, but they would help to set up the place, put the dishes around, put the silverware in places, and help to clean up afterwards. So it had like this rotating duty. So like every day there'll be a class who is in charge to help the cafeteria. So there'll be usually girls, boys sometimes. They'll go and help the cooks to set up for breakfast and then for lunch and then help to clean afterwards. And once again, there's people who miss Soviet Union. They're like, yeah, that was great. We were having fun. I was like, why would anyone say something like that he enjoyed besides sitting in school in class, then go in the cafeteria and clean the mess and pick up, food leftovers and clean the floors. And I don't think we had a washing machines to do dishes. I don't remember. But if that required, I don't think they made kids doing it. But still, all that has a lot of extra work, and some people still think that was a fantastic experience. Another interesting detail about Soviet schools, I don't think parents send us with any food items. Like there was no, here's your, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And first of all, we didn't have peanut butter in the Soviet Union. But I don't remember my mom ever gave me any food items to take. In case you get hungry, there's, granola bars, something like that. Nope. We didn't have vending machines. You couldn't buy pop or snacks, anything like that. And I don't recall anyone in class eating or between classes. We didn't bring food at all, just books, notepads. And then if you want to eat, you can go buy some food in cafeteria. And if the kids went there, then of course parents, had to pay in advance, and then your name will be on the list that you are eligible to have a meal in the cafeteria. And I mentioned that before, I actually have a playlist called Soviet Education, and if you somehow missed it, I'll post the link below in the comment section. But we didn't have like high school, middle school, elementary school separate. Everything was going on in a single building. So we had kids from 7-year-olds to 17-year-olds studying in the same building, maybe a little bit different location. Like we had a first, second, and third grade, usually we had like a separate wing, separate section, but then the rest will be mixed up. So that's another big difference. So everyone used the same cafeteria. Big kids, little kids, everyone was going. Maybe in a different, young kids will go after first class. The older kids will go after the second class, which we had 45 minutes classes with 15 minutes between them. Well, my friend, that's all I remember about Soviet school cafeterias. I hope you learned something new today. As always, if you have any questions, please put the comments in the section, or just if you like that video, please comment about it. Don't forget to like it, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.
Sergey wrote a book based on diaries he made when he was first in the United States. And as I understand, this is just volume 1, right? That's correct. He's going to have multiple volumes coming out. Well, I said, well, since Sergey is kind enough to come up and speak with us, I bought the book. I said, I might as well read this. I read this in one sitting, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I just couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because your writing is very compelling, for one. And his story is very interesting for two. It's very interesting. We've lived here our whole lives. We don't have that perspective. It's just so interesting to hear someone else's perspective about what we take for granted. So I hope you really tune in and listen to what he has to say. It's a very interesting, very informed perspective. Sergey is not a historian. He's an electrical engineer by trade, but I find that he has a depth of understanding on history, economics, culture. So just a very observant fellow and a great storyteller. So like